It had never happened to him to have such a vivid, raw response to those words. He had heard them before, out of the mouths of many women. One had been, once upon a time, his wife. He had met Vera at the University of Glasgow, his alma mater, and they had married young, eager as he had been back then to form a family and get some stability in life. But Vera hadn't turned out to be the woman he thought he had married, and the way she had told him she loved him, so perfunctory, like it had been a chore, should have alerted him to that. They had divorced soon before he had been accepted at the London School of Economics for his graduate studies, and had only met once more after that when Imp Inc. had been featured in Time magazine and she had suddenly rediscovered her love for him. He had had security escort her out. After Vera, many a woman had first gone to bed with him and then professed their love in a vain attempt to entice him into a deeper commitment. The moment that happened, they were out the door, unfit for his purpose, which was merely the scratching of a very human itch. But now, Belle had, in the throes of passion, in a breathless murmur, confessed to him, and all he could think was how little he deserved her, and how lucky he was love didn't work that way. When he moved past incredulity and humility, guilt overcame him. This girl, this nymph, that had somehow gotten stranded in Manhattan, of all places, by the grace of some god, found herself in love with him, and he had taken her against a cheap couch in the middle of a deserted coffee shop without even taking her out or buying her a small token of his affection. Like a Mercedes-Benz. For the world. He was despicable. I'm sorry, he muttered against her neck, burying his face in her hair. This is wrong. This is all so wrong. She disentangled herself from him, looking suddenly pained and panicked as she tried to put some distance between them. Oh, God, I ruined it, didn't I? She muttered haltingly, her voice husky as she stood up and looked around for something to cover herself with. I'm such an idiot, aren't I? Finally, what I've been wanting for months happens, and I open my big mouth and ruin everything. The tremor in her voice finally shook him out of his daze, and he grabbed both her wrists, yanking her back down to the couch beside him. No, that's not it. His Scottish accent, thicker than ever, almost made his words unintelligible. Belle, this is not the proper way I should have gone about things. You deserve to... I mean, I should have worked hard to earn even a smidge of your affections. I should have taken you on countless dates, showered you with gifts, and maybe one day, perhaps, after months and months of proving myself to be worthy, you would have then graced me with those words. He caressed her arms, taking in as much of her skin with his eyes as he could. I love you, Belle. Of course I do. How couldn't I? But you shouldn't love me. She smiled then, her hands going to his hair, gently petting it. He rather thought she liked his hair a bit too much, not that he was complaining. You silly man, she muttered at last, shaking her head. Whatever am I going to do with you? He smirked, feeling impish as he gathered her close, his eyes drifting towards the cinnamon and powdered chocolate shakers, arching an eyebrow. Well, the long answer would involve you agreeing to have dinner with me at my house at your earliest convenience. He paused, seeing the happiness in her face and the adoration he cannot fathom how he missed before. The short answer involves those shakers and the white chocolate sauce I know you have stashed somewhere under that lovely, lovely counter. She giggled and sprinted in search of the white chocolate, pausing by the door to lock it and make sure the blinds were all the way down, loving the way his deep, booming laugh reverberated across the room. 1 year later. Mary Margaret looked frantically around her cluttered desk, sending papers flying here and there. She was close to sobbing, but she knew Mr. Gold despised tears, particularly hers. She screamed at 2 close interns to go see if the contracts she was desperately looking for had been left in accounting. Oh, he's gonna fire me. This time he's gonna freaking fire me, she muttered under her breath, jumping 10 feet in the air when the intercom buzzed and her boss's angry Scottish brogue demanded to know where his contracts were. I'm looking for them right now, sir. I'll have them in a minute, she replied, trying to make her voice stop shaking. See that you do, dearie. There was a pause, and when Gold spoke again, he sounded angrier and even more impatient. And where is my coffee? Mary Margaret swore under her breath. She hasn't gotten here yet, sir. You know Miss Viciant is prone to keep her past her normal working hours. There was no reply, and the short-haired brunette felt relieved by that, though she grabbed her BlackBerry and texted furiously something before going back to helplessly moving papers around. Strong arms around her waist stopped her, and when she twisted around and her eyes met those of James Charmant, freshly divorced VP of Marketing. James! All worry fled her face, replaced by love and a hint of embarrassment when she realized everyone was staring at the way she was cuddling with a big suit. Now is not a good time, I'm afraid. He grinned, all boyish charm, and dangled a manila envelope in front of her eyes. Really? Not even when I have the contracts you're most desperately looking for? His smile broadened when she lunged for the envelope, pausing to peck him on the cheek before hurrying to the closed doors of her boss's office. James leant against her desk, completely at ease no matter how many interns gawked at him. Fortunately, most of the fuss about his scandalous divorce had died down. It had helped that Catherine, his ex, had moved quickly onto some sort of gym teacher from Brooklyn she was deliriously in love with. But Mary Margaret, he knew, was still taking some heat, and he wanted to make sure she didn't face it alone. They were a couple, and so whatever came at them, they would deal with it together. When she came out of the office, sans manila envelope, she was furiously texting again. Oh, God, where the hell is this girl? She growled, pacing beside her desk. What does the old ogre want now? James inquired, rolling his eyes. Mr. Gold needed to seriously work on his people skills, but he had never seen Mary Margaret so out of it before. Coffee. He wants his coffee, and if she doesn't get here in the next 5 minutes, I don't even want to think about it. She walked briskly by her very confused boyfriend, trying to sort out the mess she had made looking for these damned contracts. I don't get it. It's fucking addicted, Mary Margaret seldom swore, but James always found it strangely arousing when she did so. Cannot go for more than a few hours without his fix. The VP snorted, forcing his pretty little girlfriend to stop her frantic movements around the office for a second. So, all that ill temper is just for coffee? He inquired, his voice belying his incredulity. Mary Margaret frowned. Who said anything about coffee? Just as Charmant was about to ask for clarification, utterly puzzled by the whole situation, a brunette strode in, curly hair loosely pulled into a bun on the back of her head, a stylish peasant blouse and a black demure pencil skirt and black pumps looking pristine and neatly pressed, like she hadn't just left her work after over 9 grueling hours of hard labor. She carried a paper bag in one hand and a Starbucks cup in the other, steam rising from it, and had a leather satchel slung over one shoulder. She was all bright smiles and blue eyes, lovely in a way that caught the eye of many of the male interns and garnered looks of envy from more than one female employee. Belle, there you are! Mary Margaret looked like she wanted to both hug and throttle the newcomer. Do you have any idea of the hour? The woman smiled apologetically, pausing to kiss the secretary on the cheek. I know, but Mal kept me in her office for hours going over numbers, and I had a hard time slipping away. She looked contrite and a bit exhausted. I hope he hasn't been very difficult. The two women shared a look that seemed to convey all that needed to be said. I'm so sorry. I'll get him out of your hands in a moment, okay? By the way, thanks for receiving my dry cleaning. I knew I wouldn't have time to change once I got out of work. Not a problem. As long as you can swear to have him out of my hair in 20 minutes, we'll be even. That I can do. She smiled before turning to Charmant, narrowing her eyes at him and then breaking into another smile. And this must be charming! Mary Margaret, truly, I must congratulate you on the catch. Ruby was right, he is a hunk. She smiled impishly at Mary Margaret, and James burst out laughing, enjoying the way his girlfriend was turning 10 different shades of red. Belle, for that was how Mary Margaret had called her, shook her head, chuckling, and waltzed away towards the lair of the beast, not even pausing to knock before boldly barging her way in. It was then that it dawned on the businessman. Oh, God. When you said addiction, you meant her? He sputtered, his eyes widening to a comical degree. You mean the gold and her? It's gold and she, actually, Mary Margaret replied, correcting his grammar like she was some sort of schoolteacher and he her 10-year-old pupil. And yes, they are dating. Have been for over a year. I can't believe you didn't know. In the back of his mind, James started to recall an offhanded comment George, his father, unfortunately, had made once last month about Gold playing at being a pervy old man in some prepubescent floozy, but the confident young woman that had just passed hardly seemed to fit the description. You disapprove? The pixie-haired woman looked at him, a warning in her eyes. It was clear that his pretty little love and Belle were friends, and so any attack on Gold's relationship with a woman more or less 20 years younger than him would not be very welcomed. Not at all, especially taking into account how much dear old Dad hates it, he replied, his smile dazzling and, more importantly, genuine. Really, Nick, you're supposed to be zipping me up, not down. Belle's voice, laced with laughter, carried past the heavy doors of Gold's office and easily reached the pair, though Mary Margaret didn't appear surprised or in any way embarrassed. A booming, deep laugh followed the brunette's statement, and still the secretary carried on with her work, unfazed. The easy conclusion, which was also the rather disturbing one, was that those sorts of comments were commonplace in everyday work. I've never had the heart to tell Belle, her voice carries sometimes, the secretary admitted, a bit amused by her boyfriend's rather uneasy expression. It's just, life has become so much easier with her around. I mean, Gold's still a bastard, but now at least I have someone to call when he gets into one of his moods other than my shrink. Who is she? What does she do? She appeared over a year ago with a cup of coffee, a muffin, and demanding to see Mr. Gold. Leroy laughed to her face before Gold called him and threatened to fire him if he didn't allow her to pass. I really know very little of her. Works for Mallory Evans Ficient at Uni Global, so we bonded over how tough it is to work for veritable slave drivers. Wait. Mallory Evans Ficient? As in Mal E. Ficient? James sputtered. I thought she and Gold hated each other. Nah. They're more like frenemies, and Belle told me they agreed to be civil with each other where she was concerned. The deal, as far as I get it, is that Belle doesn't talk about Gold at her work and never mentions work around Gold. She smiled, turning when she heard the door to the lair open, and Belle exited first, freshly changed into a long Burberry prosom dress in various shades of blue, gray, and brown, with a pleated skirt, cap sleeves, an eyelet neckline, and an open back up to her waist. It was an elegant, simple dress, fun yet formal and minimally accessorized. Gold, in contrast, was sober, and for once quite dashing in a tux with a navy blue bow tie as the only concession to color. Oh my God, Vee, that looks amazing! Mary Margaret gushed, not an ounce of envy in her voice or expression, and James's heart fluttered at how innocent and pure this woman was. Belle smiled broadly, twirling around and laughing, taking a moment to talk about waistlines and seams with her friend, while the men stood a little further away, suddenly outsiders. The VP of Marketing took the opportunity to watch his boss, the hardest man in Wall Street, while his attention was riveted on his girlfriend. The harsh planes of Gold's face seemed more relaxed, and his eyes were soft, looking younger than ever before. He gave the woman a moment before gently placing his caneless hand on the small of her back, muttering something about the lateness of the hour before being on their way. Well, give me a minute and I'll change into my own amazing dress, and then we can be on our way to the party, okay? Mary Margaret placed a small, sweet kiss on his cheek and sauntered off, leaving James to ponder about the strangeness of life, the small twists and turns that could completely turn things around, and the best way to convince Mary Margaret to ditch the party early and stay the weekend at his apartment. Thank you.